Hey folks, this is Matt once again. I know it's pretty bright out, but I'm not gonna mess with the lighting because usually things are too dark, so it's whatever the sun will be because the window is right there. So the sun will choose how this is lit. But this is a paid request from Rapid Kirby. Thank you so much for that. For those interesting requests in any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. I also have some older videos under my Odysee channel on the website Odysee. Feel free to check that out. I also have a second YouTube channel just in case anything happens. But anyway, the video for today is The Rocketeer from 1991. Now, The Rocketeer is a film that I guess you could say I grew up with because I remember liking the movie back in the day. I maybe didn't watch it over and over again, but I remember seeing it. I'm going, okay, this is a fun film. Because this is that era where, after Batman, it wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon. Batman 1989 was a phenomenon that people were buying everything associated with Batman. People were getting the Batman signal, putting their haircuts, the shirts, like everything, everywhere. So studios saw that and they went, we gotta get anything remotely viable, comic book, anything of that sort. So, well, this is probably in production by the time that was being made, but you had that Captain America movie in, 1990 or so. You had, which was awful, you had, I mean, it's not based on a comic book, but it's trying to have a bit of that feel, Dark Man. Because Sam Raimi wanted to do The Shadow, and I think another project, but they didn't let him, so he kind of created his own comic book character type, Dark Man, which I like Dark Man. You had The Phantom with Billy Zane. You had Dick Tracy with Warren Beatty. You had, I've heard it pronounced Beatty. I've heard it pronounced Beatty, so bear with me on that. I've heard it pronounced both ways. But you had Dick Tracy, The Shadow, The Phantom, this movie in 91. And to be honest, most of them, really the biggest one, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and some would say that's more because of the cartoon, because it was very popular. But if you watch the movie, it's actually more like the comic book. So that's why technically you could call that a comic book movie. Because there's elements straight out of the comic book. A turtle getting beaten up and put into a coma and then going to her farmhouse. That's straight out of a comic. The comic from Mirage. Only it was Leonardo that got into a coma, not Raphael. But anyway, that's another story. And of course, you have Batman Returns and so forth. So The Rocketeer comes out and it's directed by Joe Johnston, who by this point had done Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which is a fun movie. That's a movie I'm surprised still hasn't gotten like a full-blown special edition with the bells and whistles, because Honey and Shrunk the Kids is definitely a nostalgic movie. It's definitely a film that was a big hit at the time. People have fond memories on. I felt like you could get interviews with, if this one movie Rick Moranis would probably do an interview for, it'd be that one. Because that's the franchise that Rick was okay with coming back for sequels. I mean, he came back for that third Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. He didn't come back for Ghostbusters, the later ones, except Ghostbusters 2. But he did come back for Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, so. And he was, like, willing to come back for, there was talks of that Honey, I Shrunk, I don't know, TV show, whatever the hell it was. You talk about the special effects. Anyway, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like I said, I'm surprised it hasn't gotten much of anything. But of course, Joe Johnston would later do the first Captain America movie. Which makes sense because when you have that pulp comic feel of that time period, when you do the first Captain America, it makes sense to go back to get the guy who did The Rocketeer. Because it does capture that pulp comic 1930s feel to it. It's supposed to take place in 1938. And Joe Johnston also did Jumanji and, a couple films of his I like. Jurassic Park 3. He's not really labeled as one of the great directors, but I liked a good chunk of his filmography. James Horner does the score, and I think he did a great job once again capturing that feel, the heroic, triumphant feel. And I miss James Horner. I know at times he would reuse a lot of his cues. Even this, there are times where cues feel and sound similar to films he's done in the past. He was definitely a culprit of that, but I still think he was a hell of a composer. Aliens is still, to me, one of the best action scores of all time. Not just action, but it's still one of my favorite scores, Aliens. I could listen to that now, front to back. Bishop's Countdown, to me, is still one of the greatest pieces of movie scores ever. There's a reason why it was used in half of the movie trailers that would come out after that. But yeah, James Horner's missed, and I thought he did a wonderful job on the score. And the cast. I mean, Bill Campbell, I know sadly he didn't really go on to do much because he would work, but in a way this killed his mainstream career. Where you didn't really see anything other than Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's not really anything that big of mainstream that he did after this. Because they thought, well, I guess he's not a viable leading man because this film bombed. Because I never read the source material the Rocketeer was based on, but obviously when they're shooting the film, I guess, was it Disney? They looked at it and said, wow, this actually looks pretty decent, so they gave him a bit more money. Usually you take money away, but actually gave a bit more money to pump up a bit. And whether because maybe some people thought it was just a dumb kids movie, or because it wasn't a popular brand recognition like Batman, or because that was a time you could sell a movie with a movie star. Not nowadays, but back then you could, and no one knew who Bill Campbell was. Because I know there's people like Dennis Quaid, Kurt Russell, Bill Paxton. In fact, Bill Paxton said he was close to getting it. And I could see like Dennis Quaid being in this. I could see Kurt Russell playing this character. Absolutely. That would have been actually kind of cool. But I do think Bill Campbell did a good job. He had that innocent, doe-eyed, wondrous feel to the character that, number one, you just see him being an earnest, and I don't mean Ernest P. Worrell, but an earnest, well-meaning figure that wants to do right and wants to do the correct justification of good well-being without being cringeworthy, without being silly, without being goofy or cornball. And I think Bill Campbell did that fairly well, and it's sad that, you know, he would get films like, what was it, Menno's Mind, and like these direct-to-video films. I mean, really didn't do much of anything afterward. So he placed the pilot Cliff, and it's 1938 in L.A., and his buddy is Alan Arkin, who of course has been in many films, good, capable actor, and they are trying to get this plane fixed to do this show. It's kind of their dream, where Alan Arkin's going to manage. I kind of look at him as an uncle figure, father-uncle figure to Bill Campbell's character, and they're getting ready to fly this plane finally. Bill Campbell's girlfriend is played by Jennifer Connelly, who I do like as an actress. I will say, for the most part, it seems like whenever Jennifer Connelly is with a movie, you kind of know it's going to bomb. Which is not true. I mean, I'm just saying, when I think of films she's been in, like Hulk 2003 and Dark City and, you know, other films, it seems like, well, it seemed like even though she's a capable actress, it seemed like there was a string of movies that anytime she'd be in, they were bomb. It's like she had bad luck for a bit. Paul Sorvino, who I liked him in Money Toss with Chris Tucker and Charlie Sheen. He plays this gangster. I like the little twist they do with the character. That yes, while he's a gangster, he's very pro-American. Where when he finds out what the other villain is doing, I like that twist. I thought it was fun. Some people may think it's a bit goofy or silly. I thought it was pretty satisfying. Timothy Dalton, which at this point people remember for James Bond. Underrated James Bond as well. The Living Daylights and License to Kill especially are pretty underrated James Bond films. I think License to Kill is... I would put that in my top 5 favorite James Bond movies. I love License to Kill. And I do wish, in a way, that he was able to get more chances as James Bond. Just technically, he's never made a bad James Bond film. I mean, he only made 2, but there were 2 pretty damn good ones. And the sequel, if I look at his 2, his sequel is better. So, I would love to have seen what he could have done next, but sadly, that just bad luck, bad timing, however you want to put it. But I like the idea that he plays an actor in Hollywood, and then you're trying to find out he's a spy and a saboteur. So how it plays out with his persona in movies, and then how he utilized that in during certain action scenes, and the ego of actors, and how that's portrayed. But pretty much while Bill Campbell and Alan Arkin are getting ready to fly their plane and test it out, there's a car chase happening with Tommy guns. One thing leads to another. Bill Campbell's plane gets shot down. And of course, they're miffed and pissed off. Joe Johnston handled the action scenes, action scenes fairly well. When they do find the rocket and they put it on and they test it out, and the scenes where they're flying, I mean, I still think the effects are charming to watch. They may not be 100% realistic in terms of photorealism, but they still have a certain charm to it that I don't know if they did with animation, I don't know if they did it with other techniques. It still has a bit more of a charming quality compared to the straight up CGI of today. I think because there are moments where they do mix practical elements with it. Like there's a bit later on that's mostly practical where the character gets the rocket and they're in this like ballroom, and you see him flying but kind of gliding along, and it's really him. They probably did with wires or something, but it's really him going along and across the tables. And the way he's utilized definitely gives a bit of satisfaction. You know, they pick their moments to use it. I think the score really helps. So when he's in trouble and everyone's around him, he gets up and he flies through the glass. Or while this is very, very on the nose, when at the end there's the bad guys in the Zeppelin and the Rocketeer's getting up and he's got the gun, but he's right by the American flag. I know that's very on the nose. It's about as subtle as Triple H's sledgehammer. But I mean, Spider-Man did the same thing. Remember with the Spider-Man with the American flag? I mean, it did the same thing, and you know, if you knock one, knock the other. And yeah, I know it's a bit on the nose, but it's trying to go for that patriotic feel against the Nazis, so I can understand that. I guess I'm give a bit more of a pass than others would. Other people in the film, Terry O'Quinn, who was in the 80s film The Stepfather. He was briefly in the X-Files movie. He was in the TV show Millennium with Lance Henriksen. I think he's a good actor. He plays Howard Hughes. Now, I'm sure, from what I understand about Howard Hughes, he was nothing like this guy, but again, it's a fantasy. It's a comic book movie. It's not meant to be realistic or anything. And yeah, one released another, and Bill Campbell and let me see, make sure. Want to make sure it's still recording. They find the rocket, and at first they're like, "Wow, Bill Campbell and Arkin, we can use this to make some money." Which is this thing that happened. We owe a shitload of money. At one point, there's a fellow pilot in trouble and he has to help. And there's a sincerity to Bill Campbell's performance, and the banter he has with Alan Arkin is kind of endearing. How do I look with the helmet? You look like a hood ornament. Alan Arkin's a lot of fun. He has a good, sweet sense of humor. And, like I said, there is an old-fashioned, old movie serial kind of charm quality to it. It doesn't feel cynical is what I'm getting at. I'm a very cynical guy, and it's hard to make it without seeming overly sentimental or Disney Channel, Lifetime, Hallmark Channel quality. But I thought with the actors and the score and the direction, it was handled with a sense of, like I said, sincerity to it. Now, because the character is very new to being the Rocketeer, and it makes sense why he's kind of struggling to get through it, and like when he's saving the pilot, he accidentally flies through the bottom of it, and his head pops through. I think the pilot passes out, and he tries to get in to wake him up, and then gets him out of there. By the time he gets to the end, like he's barely getting a handle on it. So that's not the movie's fault, but because of the plot structure, you never get that really huge moment with the Rocketeer just going around and just kicking ass, taking names, and maybe there's a part of your brain as a kid or an adult that want to see the Rocketeer as a badass and just, knocking people out. And I don't know, that would be deemed too violent for Disney. And I do kind of wish there was maybe a bit more leeway that wasn't just a Disney production, that it was maybe another company, so you could give maybe a PG-13 type of leeway, like Batman 89. But Batman 89, there's a bit of darkness to it. So maybe there's a part of me that would like to see it a little bit more. I mean, the most he did is probably the big guy Lothar. Where's the rocket? That kills a guy, but you don't, you see enough that he probably broke the guy in half, but not too much to steer the kids. So maybe I do wish there's a bit of, I don't know if I'm saying edge. I don't know if I'm saying a bit of, maybe a little bit more oomph to it. But for the way it is, I still enjoy the proceedings. Like I said, I like the cast. That definitely helps a lot. Paul Sorvino, as he puts it, I may not make an honest buck. I may not make an honest buck, but I'm 100% American. So I like that turn that he does. I thought that was kind of refreshing. I also like the bit when the Rocketeer flies and Paul Sorvino goes, "Go get him, kid." Like I said, I always liked that actor. He was in a Larry Cohen film called The Stuff from the 80s, and he did a really good job in that. When the flying scenes happened, I think they did the best they could for 1991 effects and with the budget they had, because they had a decent sized budget, but they're not going to have like a Jurassic Park Terminator 2 type of budget. So I thought it was effective for what they needed to do. Like I said, there's a nice charm to the proceedings, which I just repeated. It was nice that they dealt with the Zeppelin, just because it's not something you see every day. I mean, there's not a whole lot of movies that deal with that. I mean, yeah, a little scene in Indiana Jones and Last Crusade where they're on a Zeppelin, and it's just not something you see common, because you'd only see in a period piece like this, and because it's such a huge balloon that after, if you do certain things, the whole thing could explode. That's a lot of stuff to work into the schedule, so made the ending seem a little bit more unique. Like I say, Timothy Dalton's a lot of fun as the villain. I do my own stunts. I got the actor. I don't know. I can't put into words why that tickled me so much, but And that tickled me more quality. But it just did. So you said there was a... I even like the little things they put into it. For example, when Howard Hughes and the others are trying to tell Bill Campbell the seriousness of the situation, they show this animated movie. And it's done like those old school animated films where this is what Germany wants. It wants the rocket to mass produce them and cascade over America, and it really does look like the type of animation they would have back in the the Fleischer studio days with Superman, which I love that cartoon. I know it's not politically correct, but I still like that cartoon a lot. So like I like that a little bit there. Like again, any flaws with the film other than I wish there was a bit more. I forget what it's rated. I would assume it's rated PG, but if it's PG-13, I would be surprised. I think it's rated PG. Like I said, I wish there was a little bit more PG-13. I don't know if I want to say grit or edge, but just a little bit more oomph to it. Lothar, I get what they're going with. He had a face kind of like the Dick Tracy villain. I don't know. I wasn't as intimidated by his character as the movie made me want to think. I don't know. It's because he just felt so slow and lumbering, and or because you couldn't really go too far out without scaring the kids. So I don't want to say it felt neutered, but just it felt like I should be much more frightened of that character than I was, even when I saw this as a kid. I mean, I thought Shredder from the 1999 Ninja Turtles film felt more threatening than this guy. Uh, like I said, it makes sense for the plot, but I wish there was a bit more of the Rocketeer really going toe to toe with people with the rocket. Like really flying around, just punching people in the face, and but I know that would take a lot more work, a lot more timing with it. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of issues with it. I thought it was a pretty decent film. Again, it's not a film that we watch a lot. There's not really any particular reason for it, but if you like old school, if you like movies that give that old school comic book feel, those pulp comics back in the day, it has enough charm, it has enough fun in it that's worth a watch, and you do definitely watch it with your kids. That there's really nothing too discernible to make you freaked out about it or anything. So it's worth a watch. The Rocketeer. It's a fun one, and I know at one point there's supposed to be like a bigger special edition, but then I think there was a Blu-ray I believe that was released, but it felt like there was really nothing in terms of features. I know my friend Mike OCP was pissed off about that. I do wonder if part of the reason, maybe not the full reason, but I know there was a Q&A done for the Rocketeer, and Sally Kevin Smith hosted it. I say Sally because Kevin Smith, listen, I get it, I curse a lot as well, but if you're talking the Rocketeer to a panel that's mostly either be a lot of kids and it's a Disney movie, maybe don't say cocksucker every 5 seconds, or motherfucker, because then that Q&A, if they want to use that for a release, they can't because it's a PG Disney movie and you cursed every 10-15 seconds. Like, again, Kevin Smith, I did it. I curse a lot too. I love cursing as well. But at least have a little bit of fucking professionalism. How about them apples? At least a little bit. Kevin Smith. And why does he have to be in every damn panel? Most of the stuff he doesn't care about anyway. Do I really believe Kevin Smith gives a crap about the Rocketeer? No. Give me a break. But anyway. Now, my friend Michael CP, he would have been a better moderator. I really do believe that. I bet if he sees this, he would agree. If you see this, you write down, yes, damn it, I agree. But with that said, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.